Good morning, and welcome to the Beyond Oil Conference. My name is Emiliana. You all know me now. It is a privilege to open today with all of you. We have in this room scholars, practitioners, civil society leaders, funders, and policymakers from across Venezuela, the Latin American region, and the world. You came because you believe what I believe, and what Dignoni Lesaux just said she also believes, that Venezuela's future will not be decided only by oil or by the next political turn, but what happens or fails to happen in its classrooms. So let me start by saying thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of you to being here, and for those of you who are connecting online. I know there are so many of you. So in the next few minutes, I want to do three things. First, ground us all in the facts, because this conference must be built on evidence, on a shared diagnosis, not on intuition. The state of Venezuela's education is, by any measure, an emergency. Second, I want to argue, and I hope by the end of today you will agree, that education is not just one item on the agenda for Venezuela's reconstruction. It is the agenda. Without it, nothing else holds. And third, I want to set out what we hope to accomplish before we leave Cambridge. Not just panels and applause, but a consolidated agenda for action that travels back with you to Caracas, to Washington, to New York, to wherever you're going for work. Before I show you the data, I want to tell you why I am here standing before you today. I was born in Caracas in October 1968. I grew up in a country that in the 1970s and 1980s was a thriving economy and had peaceful transfers of power every 5 years. My father ran a family business, and my mother had not finished high school. Yet together they believed, almost with a religious conviction, that education was what they needed to give their children so that we could thrive, that it would change a person's life. And they were committed to doing that for us, and I benefited from that. They sent my sister and me to one bilingual school, an excellent school in Caracas called Jefferson Academy. They sent us to summer camps in Maine. I won't tell you I enjoyed it, the freezing cold water of the lake, and not speaking a word of English, but having to quickly learn. But it was transformative. And then they sent us to a boarding school in Connecticut called the Ethel Walker School. And it was there that I learned what an excellent education was about. And although I was very homesick and missed my family and being home, and this is way before we had FaceTime or internet, and could communicate only by letters and very expensive phone calls, maybe once a week, I made the most of it. And when I returned to Venezuela for college at the Universidad Católica Andrés Bello, or UCAB, I realized how much my Walker's education had prepared me for success. I was in classes with some of the top students from some of the best schools across the country, and they struggled learning the academic material and passing the end-of-year cumulative exams, and I sort of breezed through, working probably less hard than I had at Walker's, but I had a very strong foundation thanks to my education. Intuitively, I understood then what seemed evident, and now I know as an economist of education, that a country's future depends on its education. Its economic development, its income inequality rests on the quality of its schools. And that is why, after graduating from UCAB, I returned to the US to study public policy at Duke University, and then to come here to the Graduate School of Education. Yes, I am a proud alum of the school, to study economics of education. And I have tried to work throughout my career to improve educational opportunity across countries like Venezuela. From my time at the World Bank to the Inter-American Development Bank, where I headed the education division, to the Brookings Institution, and now at Harvard, every job I have taken, in one way or another, is about improving education in Latin America through evidence and research. And yet I have not been able to visit my own country for a very long time. I am one of more than the 6 million Venezuelan that the world now calls a diaspora. I have built a life in the United States. I have a wonderful husband, David, and together we have 5 children, all of whom are U.S. citizens. I am a U.S. resident now, and I am extremely grateful for what this country has given me. But while I have long lived outside of Venezuela, Venezuela lives deeply within me. And when I tell you that education must sit at the center of Venezuela's recovery, I am not speaking only as a researcher or policy analyst. I am speaking as a daughter of this country. The work we do in this conference, for me, is also a way of going home. So let me start with one number, because everything else flows from it. 1 in 3. 1 in 3 school-aged children in Venezuela today is outside of school. They are not enrolled, they are not learning, they are not in a classroom. Let that sink for a moment. In a country that, when I was a child, was sending students to the best universities in the world, today 1 in 3 children or more are out of school. Public spending per student in 2023, the last year for which we have data, and one of the common threads of all our work is how scarce data is about Venezuela, was $232 US, far below Latin American regional averages and far below what any OECD country spends. To give you just some sense of perspective, that same year in the US, on average, with great differences across states, the US spent $20,000 per student. Countries like Chile spent around $7,000. Colombia, our neighbor, $4,000. Both of these Latin American countries are clearly below the average of high-income countries, OECD countries, but still many times the meager amount that Venezuela invests on its children. Access has collapsed. 34% of children in school age are outside the classroom, and as Noni said this morning, or just a few minutes ago, 70 to 75% of students fail to reach the minimum passing score in math and language. In our grading system, that's 10 out of 20. Investment, access, and learning, all 3 at once. This is not a country with an underperforming school system alone. This is a country whose education infrastructure has been hollowed out from the inside. Yet behind every classroom, there is a teacher, a building, and a family. And each of those also has been hollowed out. More than 100,000 teachers are missing from the workforce against an estimated need of 500,000 nationwide. Roughly 12,000 of our schools out of 23,000, almost half, are severely damaged. And about 6 million Venezuelans have emigrated. And I had a different data in my latest, but we changed presentations so much, so I'll say it, because I already said about 1 million children are out of school, and it's a massive enrollment gap. But what's almost more striking is that the average teacher earns only $20 a month, which is way below any wage necessary to meet basic standards. Which brings me to the heart of why we are here. It is tempting in a moment of national crisis to put education on second page, after security, after macro stabilization, after the electricity grid, which some of you have told me we currently have blackouts of 6 hours a day. After the oil sector. We hear this argument often, and I want to answer it directly. There are 3 reasons why education must sit at the center of Venezuela's recovery. First, human flourishing. Education is still the single most reliable path out of poverty and into opportunity. For the children sitting in damaged classrooms in Petare or in Maracaibo today, and for the country those children will inherit. There is no version of a just Venezuela in which we ask one more cohort of our children to lose their childhood to this crisis. Second, economic recovery. Each additional year of quality schooling raises lifetime earnings by 10%. This is a finding by my friends George Sakharopoulos and Harry Petrinas that has been repeated over and over throughout the world and throughout many years. And foundational learning programs return $5 for every dollar invested. That is quite a good deal, right, for us economists in terms of cost benefit. And third, democracy and return migration. A plural, inclusive classroom is where democratic life is rehearsed. And the more than 6 million Venezuelans out of the country will only seriously consider returning home if there their children can learn and thrive. Education is very literally what brings the diaspora back. And let me underline one thing in this slide. And for those of you who don't love graphs, I'm sorry, but I'm an economist. I have to fight with the students to present this. But this is one of the most important findings of the economics of education in the last 20 years. And the clear message is that it is not enrollment, it is not just having children in schools that leads to economic growth. This is a graph from a paper by two prominent economists, Eric Hanushek and Ludger Wolzman, who took the time to standardize international assessments of many, many countries in the world. And here I've highlighted 3 countries. In red, Peru at the very bottom, and where you can see that Peru has very low average standardized test scores, which are in the horizontal axis, and negative economic growth rate at the time they did this research. You see Brazil in the middle with about, a half of a standard deviation lower than it should, and near zero economic growth. And the top right, you see in green, Singapore, a country that consistently outperforms in international assessments of student learning, and that also has consistently high economic growth rates. Another recent study by Noam Angrist and co-authors finds that 20 to 50% of the differences in GDP, which is the income of an entire nation, is associated with differences in learning. This matters enormously for Venezuela. We could rebuild every damaged school, hire back every missing teacher, and re-enroll every child. But if they don't learn in school, we have failed. Which brings me to what we are asking of you today. We have 4 goals. First, a shared diagnosis. Across academia, civil society, and policy, we want to leave this conference with a common picture of where Venezuela's education stands today. Not 5 different opinions, but one evidence-based diagnosis. 2, high-impact priorities. We want to identify the concrete evidence-informed actions that can move the needle in the first 36 months of the transition. Third, cross-sector partnerships. We want to forge coalitions of practitioners, researchers, policymakers, and funders that are ready to act together when the political window opens, because eventually that window will open, and we want to be prepared. And 4, produce a consolidated agenda. We will produce an edited volume and a public roadmap. Something that outlives the conference, something we can put into hands in Caracas, in Washington, in Brussels, wherever the conversation about Venezuela's future takes place. 6 priorities, 1 integrated system. This is how we've organized the conference. So first, we're going to have panels on teaching talent, because preparing, retaining, and supporting Venezuela's educators must be a priority. They hold the system in their shoulders. Second, foundational learning. Recovering reading, writing, and math in the early grades, because nothing else works without that. Third, education for democracy. Plural, inclusive classrooms that strengthen democracy. We firmly believe that in our current context is as important as learning to read. Fourth, nutrition and well-being. Safe buildings, services, and school meals that reach every child, because evidence shows us that a hungry child cannot learn. Fifth, financing and innovation. We want to establish innovative models. One of the beauties about our incredible crisis is that we don't have to build from what's there. We can really reinvent the system and take the best from all over the world. And finally, early childhood development, because the first years of life set the trajectory for everything that happens afterwards. This is a critical window for investing in the future. Each of these priorities will get its own panel, and each panel and the conversations and feedback we get from our speakers and from the audience will inform the final volume. So this is very exciting. A quick word about the scale of the conference. We have over 1,000 participants in the room today and online, representing academia, civil society, members of the diaspora, and funders. We have 6 panel discussions, 1 per priority, each producing a chapter of the consolidated volume. And again, we'll produce an edited volume published with ELA, the foundation of our shared agenda for action. Because while everything we do here is great, the volume will be a tool, and a tool can be picked up by anyone, anywhere. And finally, and very importantly, we have a very special keynote speaker, Maria Corina Machado, our leader and Nobel Peace Laureate. Before I close the opening session, I'd like to invite the 2 student co-chairs of the conference, Veronica Rossi and Valentina Manso.
I can't start without Valentina. Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Veronica Rosic. I'm from Caracas, Venezuela, and I am a master's student in the Education Policy and Analysis program here at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. It is my honor to receive you all today in this conference dedicated to education in Venezuela. I want to begin by sharing my why. Why education and why Venezuela? What school in Venezuela gave me was precious. It gave me extraordinary, dedicated teachers who instilled in me a passion for reading, curiosity, and ideas. Education gave me joy. It gave me the excitement about the world. It allowed me to dream and chase those dreams. And in many ways, it shaped the person that I am today. When I arrived at HGSE, I already knew I cared deeply about the role education plays in shaping children's lives. I came with a conviction to serve students who needed it the most through education. Little did I know that this year would become a profound journey of reconnecting with Venezuela and finding a greater sense of purpose connected to my home country. Little did I know that I would meet here a Venezuelan professor and mentor who gave me an opportunity to work with her to find strategies to recover Venezuela's education system. Thank you, Professor, for believing in me and guiding me through this journey. Little did I know that I would find Valentina, a dream partner who shares both my wound and hope for Venezuela. She has been a friend and she has been a teacher. And nothing would have been possible without these 2 people right here. Little did I know that this project, which started with 18 passionate graduate students getting together in a room to talk about policy and what's happening in Venezuela, would crystallize in this day, which I see as the beginning of a long journey that we still need to walk together. This conference is, for many of us, very personal. It is an invitation to imagine a Venezuela beyond oil, one where education becomes central to growth, inclusion, dignity, and human flourishing. Today, we wanted to show the extent of the learning crisis that Venezuela is facing, but we also want to convey a message of hope and commitment. Together, it is in our hands to set the right conditions for all children in Venezuela to have opportunities to thrive and shape their future. Opportunities to dream like I did, like my teachers taught me to, and to chase those dreams. Lastly, I want to thank you all for being here. We have teachers, we have policymakers, we have philanthropies, we have people who's coming from Venezuela and traveling from other places in the US, and I want to thank you all for being here today. We need you. We need you all for this mission that is bigger than each of us individually, but that together can become a reality. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the day.
Buenos días. Good morning. My name is Valentina Maza. I was born and raised in Mérida, Venezuela. And today I have the honor of serving as co-chair of this conference. Because of the regime, I have not seen my parents in 8 years. They're watching now. Hola, papi. Hola, mami. On the morning of my college graduation, instead of having them in the next room, I had them on a small phone screen on my desk while I sat on my dorm bed put on my gown. My mom, as usual, she tried to fix my hair through the camera. My dad adjusted my hood with his words, but both of them thousands of miles away. A few hours later, when I walked into the stage, I looked at my own parents, even though I knew they were not there. The empty space where they should have been showed what it has meant to be Venezuelan in these last years. Living with empty chairs and a constant knot in our throats, but also a deep sense of pride. Even when my parents could not be there in person, I did not walk into the stage alone. I walked with my teachers, classmates, mentors, books, and every opportunity that education had given me. The same education that has allowed me to stand here has allowed so many other Venezuelans to do so much with almost nothing. My education is made of people with names and faces. For me, it was teachers like Luis, Daniela, Yesenia, Yarira, Emiliana, and many others. They made magic with almost nothing. When the electricity went out in the middle of our presentations, they moved us into the hallway so we could keep going. Many of them took 3 or 4 buses to get to school on time, and still showed up every single day when their salaries were not enough to support their own families. They were the difference between giving up and believing that another future was possible. This fight is not my personal story. It is the Venezuelan story. Story of teachers who hold the line, of students who keep dreaming, and a country that, despite everything, refuses to lose hope in a better future. And even in the middle of blackouts, low salaries, and empty chairs, Venezuelan teachers and students have managed to do so much with so little. For too long, Venezuela's future has been shaped by a dictatorship that has weakened our institutions and our freedoms. Now, as we talk about rebuilding our country, imagine what we can do if we truly put education first. As such, we cannot afford to treat education as something secondary. It must be the foundation on which we rebuild Venezuela. So my invitation today is simple. To the teachers in this room and across Venezuela and the world, never underestimate the power of what you do. You have held the country together in classrooms that often had almost nothing. And you have changed lives in ways that will never appear in any headline. To policymakers, allies, and institutions. A new Venezuela will only be possible if we treat education not as an expense, but as the core investment that makes every other reform possible. I am here because, at every step, someone opened a door for me through education. Harvard is just not a personal achievement. It is proof of what our people can do. Cuando un venezolano llega, llegamos todos. When one Venezuelan arrives, we all arrive. And it should become a path for many more. Our task now is to make education a true pillar of our country's reconstruction, so that stories like mine are not the exception, but part of a new Venezuelan normal. Thank you, y muchísimas gracias por estar hoy con nosotros acá.
Okay, a little housekeeping. We will start all sessions, not in Venezuelan time, but on a U.S. time and sharp. Look at your watches or whatever you need, phones. We have a 15-minute break, both in the morning and the afternoon, for coffee and snacks. Please plan to return to the auditorium on time for a prompt start. Again, Venezolana? No. Lunch is on your own from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. Plan to be back by 1:25. There are lots of really great affordable places nearby, so ask any of our students and they'll guide you depending on what you prefer. We have Indian, we have Asian food, we have Venezuelan arepas, everything in Harvard Square. And you're invited to a networking event in the Gottman Conference Center, literally just across Appian Way, between 6 and 7:30 this evening. We extended it, right? Yeah. So to close, I just want to leave you with this sentence. Venezuela's future depends on what happens in its classrooms. I firmly believe this. And I want us today to take this as the beginning of a movement, a collaboration, and that's why we've built so many spaces for us to chat and to connect, to work, so that our classrooms really are the foundation for a prosperous and democratic country that we all so deeply want. Thank you very much.